Welcome to Top 10 Spooky Stories.
Number 1. The Chair.
When my sister Betsy and I were kids, our family lived for a while in a charming old farmhouse. We loved exploring its dusty corners and climbing the apple tree in the backyard. But our favorite thing was the ghost. We called her Mother, because she seemed so kind and nurturing. Some mornings Betsy and I would wake up, and on each of our nightstands,
We'd find a cup that hadn't been there the night before. Mother had left them there, worried that we'd get thirsty during the night. She just wanted to take care of us. Among the home's original furnishings was an antique wooden chair which we kept against the back wall of the living room. Whenever we were preoccupied, watching TV or playing a game, Mother would inch that chair forward, across the room, toward us. Sometimes she'd manage to move it all the way to the center of the room. We always felt sad putting it back against the wall. Mother just wanted to be near us. Years later, long after we'd moved out, I found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse's original occupant, a widow. She'd murdered her 2 children by giving them each a cup of poisoned milk before bed. Then she hung herself. The article included a photo of the farmhouse's living room, with a woman's body hanging from a beam. Beneath her, knocked over, was that old wooden chair, placed exactly in the center of the room. Did it get colder in here, or is it just me? Number 2. Who's in my bed? A father went to say goodnight to his 7-year-old son, very well knowing that if he didn't his son would have trouble sleeping. It was a nightly routine between them. He entered the dimly lit room where his son waited under his blanket. With the first glance the father could tell there was something unusual about his son tonight, but couldn't put his finger on it. He looked the same but had a grin that drew from ear to ear. "You okay, buddy?" the father asked. The son nodded, still with the grin, before saying, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." The father chuckled a bit before getting on his knees to check only to satisfy his son. There, under the bed, pale and afraid, was his son. His real son. He whispered, "Daddy, there's someone on my bed."
Number 3.
A mother's call. A daughter was in her room upstairs, doing her homework, when suddenly she heard her mother call to come down for dinner. She jumped onto her feet and began making her way towards the stairs, but before even took a step, hands grabbed her and pulled her into the laundry room besides the staircase. She panicked before realizing it was her mother, her real mother, eyes watery and bloodshot. "Don't go down there, honey, I heard it too." Number 4. Nun Chucks. When my daughter was 2, I found her twirling paper towel tubes, tied with twine, in the air. I asked her what she was doing. She said she was practicing her Nun Chucks. I was very confused as she'd have no way of knowing what they were. I asked her what she meant and she said that Adam had told her how to make them and showed her each night how to use them. She went on to say that Adam told her to practice because she may need to know how to defend herself someday. I almost freaked out, but asked her what Adam looked like. She said he was tall, blonde, and had blue eyes. She said, "Mommy, you know how he looks, you know him. He died of a headache." I had to leave the room. You see, 4 months before she was born, my tall, blonde, blue-eyed, martial arts pro friend had died of a brain aneurysm at the age of 27. She has not spoken of him since that day, so I'm not sure if I scared her with my reaction or if she had completed her lessons. Number 5. The puppy in the basement. Mommy told me never to go in the basement, but I wanted to see what was making that noise. It kind of sounded like a puppy, and I wanted to see the puppy, so I opened the basement door and tiptoed down a bit. I didn't see a puppy, and then Mommy yanked me out of the basement and yelled at me. Mommy had never yelled at me before, and it made me sad and I cried. Then Mommy told me never to go into the basement again, and she gave me a cookie. That made me feel better, so I didn't ask her why the boy in the basement was making noises like a puppy, or why he had no hands or feet. Number 6. The ghost at home. Last night a friend rushed me out of the house to catch the opening act at a local bar's music night. After a few drinks I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. I checked the table we were sitting at, the bar, the bathrooms, and after no luck I used my friend's phone to call mine. After 2 rings someone answered, gave out a low raspy giggle, and hung up. They didn't answer again. I eventually gave it up as a lost cause and headed home. I found my phone laying on my nightstand, right where I left it. Number 7. The red wristband. A doctor was working at a hospital where the patients were tagged with colored bands. Green, alive, red, deceased. One night, the doctor was instructed to get a few supplies from the basement of the hospital, and so he headed to the lift. The lift doors opened and there was a patient inside, minding her own business. Patients were allowed to roam around the hospital to stretch, especially those who have stayed long. The rule was to be back in their rooms before 10. The doctor smiled at the patient before pressing the number for the basement. He found it unusual that the woman didn't have a button already pressed. He wondered if she was heading to the basement too. The lift finally reached the floor where the doors opened. In the distance a man was limping towards the elevator, and in a panic the doctor slammed the elevator button to close. It finally did and the lift began to ascend back up, the doctor's heart pounding. "Why did you do that?" He was trying to use the lift. The woman stated, annoyed. "Did you see his wrist?" The doctor asked. "It was red. He died last night. I would know because I did his surgery." The woman lifted her wrist. He saw red. She smiled. "Like this one."
Number 8.
Hands. Drunk and hopeless, he stumbled to the garage and started the table saw, then slowly lowered his wrists toward the screaming blade. And drank bourbon. Drunk and hopeless, he stumbled to the garage and started the table saw, then slowly lowered his wrists toward the screaming blade. Detective Armstrong entered the garage where several uniformed officers stood over the blood-soaked body. "So what do we got?" he asked, taking in the blood-splattered scene. "This is a weird one, Detective." "How so?" "Take a look at the body. He apparently chopped off his hands with the table saw and bled to death." Armstrong knelt down, and we can't find his hands anywhere. Number 9. He stood against my window. I couldn't move. I froze and watched him looking past me through the glass. I don't know why I looked up, but when I did I saw him there. He stood against my window. His forehead rested against the glass, and his eyes were still and light and he smiled a lipstick red, cartoonish grin. And he just stood there in the window. My wife was upstairs sleeping. My son was in his crib and I couldn't move. I froze and watched him looking past me through the glass. "Oh, please no." His smile never moved but he put a hand up and slid it down the glass, watching me. With matted hair and yellow skin and face through the window, I couldn't do anything. I just stayed there, frozen, feet still in the bushes I was pruning, looking into my home. He stood against my window. Number 10. Hidden. She stares back at me, eyes wide, round gagged. But alive. "Where are you?" I scream. Panicked, I run through the abandoned farm. I can't find her. Not in the old house. Not in the barn. I run into the empty field, heart racing. As I scan the area, I run into a mound of dirt and trip, sprawling to the ground. Getting up, it hits me. Abandoned farm. I tripped over freshly tilled earth. Crouching down, I start frantically clawing with my hands. Scooping handfuls of dirt, I hit something hard. "Wood, are you in there?" I cry, pressing my ear to the wood. I hear muffled cries. I start digging again, but realize it's taking too long. Looking around, I see a garden shed. I sprint to it, ripping the door open. I see a shovel, still caked in dirt. Probably the same one that bastard buried her with. I grab it. Running back, I started digging with purpose. Soon the wooden box is exposed. I toss the shovel, and rip open the crate. She stares back at me, eyes wide. Bound, gagged, but alive. I sigh with relief. Thank God. I reach into my bag, pulling out my rag and chloroform. I crouch down, placing it over her face. She struggles, faints. I toss her over my shoulder. Ah, hell, my brother says as I walk back to the truck with a smirk. You found her. Yup, you almost had me though. I laugh. All right, my turn. Where did you put her? I gesture to the creek area. Somewhere over there. Drowning's an issue though. Jerk, he says, running off. I smile, watching him go. I love adult hide and seek.